Hey everybody, so this is going to be a little follow-up. These are some spoiler included thoughts about Honor Amongst Thieves, since I haven't gotten around to saying any of those. Um, and this is going to have less of a point on one level. My first one was definitely more designed around what would make you possibly like this movie or not like this movie, and did I think it was good? Which I did think it was good. I do think a lot of people would like it. I don't think you have to be a D&D fan to really understand what's going on or to like it. But I wanted to talk about some spoiler stuff, and the reason why I wanted to do that in particular was because of a uh, uh, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff at play in this movie when you dig past it that actually make me really like it, and then some confusion about it, which is understandable that it's there in my mind, but that I don't get. There's a lot of people who didn't see this movie, or I should let me pull back and rephrase. So I'm in a discussion group online, a big fan forum for sword and sorcery movies, and this movie, I was one of several people who had went seeing it and was very like, "Hey, don't sleep on this movie. It's good. Go check it out if you like typical '80s sword and sorcery style movies." Um, this doesn't have a lot of that same grit, but it's there. It's definitely good if you like that genre. And a few people had mentioned that they weren't going to go watch it because it was going to be full of woke politics. One person said, "I saw it, and I wish the writers would have just left the politics at home." And I really, I don't know what this person is talking about. I asked them specifically, and I never got an answer. I'm actually not sure they saw the movie, just to be honest, because it's actually a refreshingly apolitical movie in my mind. Um, what I think was most people were talking about, there was an article way back in the day, and by way back in the day, I mean shortly after the OGL kerfuffle. And if people didn't go see it because of the OGL, I have my own thoughts on that. I don't. I think they're missing the point, and I really wish they would have go see the movie and enjoy it, and realize that it has no impact on whether or not Wizards is going to play nice in returns to the open gaming license. But I actually thought there was an article that came out that I'd seen the headline of, and I did kind of sigh myself when I saw it, where it talked about something like filmmakers emasculated men and are, are excited that they could emasculate the male leads in the movie, something to that effect, which was a clickbaity headline. It's clear that a lot of people didn't actually even click it and read the article, because if they had, they would have seen that quote doesn't actually happen in that article even. It's one of those things. Clickbaity, poorly written article with clickbaity title is a poorly written article. But the what was actually kind of emphasized by the director, I believe it was, who was talking about how he actually found it kind of refreshing to write for something like D&D, because the general audience, i.e., D&D players, um, are a lot more accepting, or are realizing that you can cast a character who would, as like a male, in a role like a bard, like the lead of the movie is in, which is not the heavy hitter, big bruiser type. Um, and you can have right alongside him a female who's playing the more barbarian style type, and it doesn't seem emasculating or weird, because that happens at a lot of tables, where you'll be playing and somebody rolls up the bard and somebody rolls up the barbarian, and there's generally not a whole lot of um, pre-written conception into what genders need to be playing what roles in those kinds of things. There are tables where that happens. Like, I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, but the director was just commenting how he found you could do this kind of stuff. And actually, what's funny is in that article, he talks about how he kept telling Chris Pine to be more heroic in certain situations. He's like, look, just because you're the bard doesn't mean you can't, like, that you're not a hero. You still need to be the hero. Um, so that's interesting. Like, it actually, the article kind of says the opposite of what people seem to be upset about. But that was just one thing. I really liked it. You clearly didn't watch the movie because clearly the most powerful character in the movie is the paladin, who's male. Who, until they bring out some book later that tells me he's asexual or something. Like, I mean, there's no point. You don't get that from the movie. Um, but and he is clearly, like I said, the most powerful character by far. Does a very D&D thing where it's like, oh, NPC got introduced, way too powerful. Let's phase him out real quick. He was probably my favorite character in the movie. But uh, and Simon, who's the sorcerer, his whole story arc, the character arc, and granted, he's more of a tertiary character, so it's not like he takes a ton of screen time. But he is initially the butt of a lot of Simon sucks at everything jokes, but that his arc is him gaining confidence and realizing he needs that, and that he is good and as a sorcerer, and that he just needs to be confident in that. And he's not fully there by the end of the movie, but it's a major plot beat that he takes many steps closer to that. So I don't know. When people are like, "I wish they would lift the anti-mid politics at home," I'm like, I really don't know what movie you watched, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't Honor Among Thieves. Did you wander into the wrong theater by mistake? That might be your fault. Um, but I actually too really thought that it held at its core tenet. And if you watch my spoiler-free review, you know that I said there's no surprises in this movie at all, plot-wise. Or at least there shouldn't have been if you've read any book in the history of ever. Um, so it was pretty clear that, okay, somebody's going to die and they're going to use the resurrection tablet on somebody else instead. And I was like, yeah, it's probably going to be Michelle Rodriguez. Just makes sense. She's the, again, because I played D&D, she's the meat shield. So she's going down and somebody's going to have to resurrect her or heal her at some point. And that ends up happening. She goes down. But I thought they did a really good job of tying the emotional beat, and they even set it up like, I don't know, the movie screamed it at you, where it's like it even comes down to him saying, I tried to tell myself I was saving your mom, but I wasn't. I'm, like, I was trying to resurrect my wife, not your mom. uh and like it clicks for him then when he sees Helga down and his daughter's crying about it, and he's like, wait, this is how I resurrect her mom, because this is her mother. um and yeah, there's some character connection that's probably a little rushed and could have used some more time to breathe earlier in the movie, but I mean, I felt it. It hit the emotional beat for me that it was supposed to hit. And it really, I felt like, as far as a message went, that was deeper than I expected, for the message to not be empowerment or no message, we're just having fun and being humorous, which were kind of the two things that I was expecting. That the message, and it wasn't even generic sacrifice. It was realizing that Eldon had to realize that Chris Pine's character, whose name I'm forgetting right now, what he had to do uh, to be an actual hero, to which he was, but it's like what drove him to realize, wait, I have to sacrifice for my children. That means seeing what's actually best for them, not what I think is best for them, but what is actually, and it's not necessarily what they think is best for themselves, but it's just like, what is really needs to happen, and get that done. And that's going to cost me, but that's the cost I pay because I'm the parent of this individual. I thought that was a pretty deep message to be buried in a D&D movie, and came across really strong and really well for the core emotional theme of it. Um, and particularly, in the context of first giving up the treasure, and that was kind of like, there's your sacrifice. You gave up the treasure to be heroic, to go in and do this thing, and kind of subverting that trope of, and then we'd expect, save the day, get the girl, save the day, defeat the bad guy, get the girl. He's intentionally not getting the girl. He's bypassing that to give the person that he said, you're the priority, and I'm not just going to say you're the priority. You in fact are, and here, let me, you know, let me do this one thing that needs to happen. Um, so I thought that was pretty good. I thought that placed, that painted as far as modern cultural politics. I, that's a message that kind of surprised me that it came out of this movie. That it wasn't just a empowerment movie, but rather was a you have to sometimes to do the right thing. It does mean looking out for who are you responsible for, and realizing that the best thing for them might fall outside of everybody's expectations, and sacrificing for that. Anyway, it's probably just because I have kids now. That's probably the reason why I saw that way. Maybe 20 years ago would have been different. But anyway, um, other things that this movie's D&D references were perfect in my mind. Yes, I noticed the same thing everybody else does, and I think it gets overplayed when people are like, "Well, you can't wild shape into an owlbear." Well, one scene I counted the second it started. Marcus was sitting next to me. I'm sure I annoyed him every time the druid started wild shaping. I started counting on my fingers. How many are we getting in this encounter? Because I want to know. And then that first infiltration scene, she does it 7 times. I counted, and that is impossible. I mean, if she's a level 20 archdruid, Circle of the Moon, she could do that. But that's what that would take, and she clearly wasn't that. Um, I, like everybody else, I noticed that kind of stuff, and then uh, I'm gonna make a joke about it, but it doesn't bother me because it worked in the context of the movie, and I think that's what gets overplayed. Like back when in the trailer, she Doric wild shaped into a owlbear, and a lot of people made comments about it, like, you technically can't do that, and then other people were, like, oh, here come all the grognards that are saying this movie's gonna suck because it doesn't follow the rules. I did not see anybody honestly, unironically say this shows that they don't care about the movie, or that they don't care about the rules and the movie's gonna suck. I'm sure somebody said that, but like that was clearly not the bulk opinion of anybody. Um, and the same, I was the same way. I noticed. I'll say something about it, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to actually be upset about it. But the wild shape scene was great. What they did that was really good, when you step back away from mechanics and you look at the power fantasy of every class in D&D, because D&D having class structures, obviously, I'm not necessarily, I prefer classless systems, but in class systems, a class should revolve around an archetype kind of like theme. Like, what do you get? Why are you playing this class? Why do you play a barbarian? Um, well, you play a barbarian because you want to be an unstoppable juggernaut of rage and fury who can absorb tons of damage, and they capture that completely. Like, why do you play a druid? There's probably multiple answers to this, but kind of core to that fantasy for a lot of people is, hey, I want to be able to, like, I like this nature themed magic and the nature themed connections, and the fact that I can change into all these different animals. Uh, and so having a character capturing that feel of the class, like, oh my gosh, the paladin. Like, that's a perfect. Why do people play paladins? Because they want to be they want to be that character right there. That was that was perfect in my mind. But the holy aura, the overdrama, the melodramatic angle, the incredible amount of power you can throw down as a paladin, all of that perfectly encapsulated right there. Really good. uh, so yeah, I felt like it did that for each of the classes. It kind of captured, this is why you play this class. Um, with a possible exception, and it might be why on one level, Simon, I really liked. Um, but I don't know, like, I guess because people do play sorcerers to kind of like, you come to terms with your magic, and that was clearly what his character arc was. It was rushed, I guess. I just felt like he could have, if you wanted him to be a little more core, he should have had more time. But I loved the way he had a components pouch. Like the second I first saw him do the thing where he kind of like screwed the clockwork and it shot the dust in his hand and he threw it up, I was like, oh, that's his component pouch. That is cool. I love that. I'm still using an arcane focus. I don't care. That was cool. I did actually really like that angle that they went with on it. Um, I like that he had a wild magic surge, so we not only knew he was a sorcerer, we knew specifically that he was a wild magic sorcerer. That they kind of played that in there. That was fun. Um, the spells, being able to recognize spells on that level was really cool, and not just in the like, I've read this book, and so when the person casts a spell, oh, I remember in this scene when they cast this spell, I know the spell. Like, but just the flexibility of it, where it's like, oh, hey, I know all these spells. I know what spells I would use in this situation. But like, presumably, you can look at this person, you see the spells he's casting, you're like, okay, maybe he's about level 4, level 5, someplace in there, and you can start thinking about other stuff. It was really fun when Simon at the end during the Wizard's battle casts Maximilian's Earthen Grasp, because I had a sorcerer who that was his main go-to spell for as far as battlefield control. And so it was just kind of cool to all of a sudden when Bigby's grasping hand comes out from Sophie, and it gets countered with this Maximilian's Earthen Grasp, and yes, the spells wouldn't interact that way, but coming up, I was like, oh, it's Vilks. That's his spell. Now cast Infestation. Grab somebody and cast Infestation on him. That's my 1-2 punch. um, didn't happen, but like it was fun to know the actual, like, to have a movie that was set within a game system that like has that much precision to everything it does, that you could recognize stuff when it happened and that you could call out stuff. It was a lot of fun. If you were a D&D fan, there's a ton of stuff in there, but I like the way that if you weren't a D&D player, I went to see it with my group, and I've got players who've never played spellcasters who are like new to the system, have only been playing for a couple of years, if that long. And it doesn't cut back that they don't have, they have lives and don't have the spellbook memorized, unlike me. It did pretty good for them as well. And so I thought there was a great balance of taking an established IP, telling a story in it, but not like where if you knew what was going on, it was great. And if you didn't know what was going on, it was great. Jonathan, oh my gosh. And Thunderjaw. Like the bringing in of NPCs who steal the show, so D&D. Like this movie was just so D&D. I saw somebody comment online, they're like, oh, it's not like D&D like I ever play it. And I was like, well, then I don't know what tables you play at. I don't want to play at those tables. I'm sorry. If you don't have a Jonathan at your table, then it's really not worth it in my mind. I'm not saying role playing can't be serious. That's why we have Call of Cthulhu. Go play that. But there was so many good things to take away from as a D&D player on it. What it actually did really good, I think, what a GM, if somebody asked me, what are some actual D&D tips you could take away from this movie? One of the big things I would say is this Honor Among Thieves showed you how to use the Sword Coast as the setting really well, where somebody who knows about the Sword Coast and the lore is going to enjoy it. Somebody who's new to D&D who has not played in the Sword Coast is not going to be lost. Like, both of those things were there. If you knew lore, great. If you didn't know lore, the fact that Faye looks like, a death metal album cover from the late 80s did kind of let you know everything you need to know about it. And you can move forward from there. It's not like you're lost. Anyway, so I guess that was the main thing I wanted to cover, was just that I really liked that central emotional theme that I felt in the movie of because it leaned heavily into parental relationship with him and his daughter, and kind of what it meant to be a responsible parent. And I actually thought they did a really good job of starting like, here's irresponsible parenting, and he's gotten to this point where he's probably not going to be a perfect dad. I don't think anybody's going to say that, but he's shown that he understands what it is to actually be a good father at this point. Anyway, beyond that, I would love to see. They name dropped Waterdeep a couple times. They name dropped Boulder's Gate. We didn't get to see either of them. I would have loved to see Waterdeep. I would actually like to see the movie Return to Waterdeep, and when they have a budget that they can throw down and actually see some of those statues animate. Get Vajra out there with the black staff and animate the giant walking statues. That would be cool. Have an actual like dragon on statue kaiju fight. Can't be a dragon. It's Waterdeep. There's your thing. Actually, there's the movie plot. WotC, run dragon heist for your characters. One of them gets the dragon staff. It somehow gets outside Waterdeep. They lose control of it. Somehow. Maybe somebody backstabs the party again. It's not that hard, but have that happen pretty fast. Dragon gets a hold of the staff of Dragonkind or Dragonkin staff, whatever. I forget the name of it from Dragon Heist, and can now actually enter Waterdeep. For those of you who don't know, dragons cannot enter Waterdeep. There's stuff. It's magic is the reason. You don't need to know more than that. But there's one staff that can if your dragon is holding it, they can come into Waterdeep. And that would be pretty cool to see a dragon versus like the Waterdeep statues animate come in. That would be pretty cool. And you get Vajra in there. She's really awesome. Raynar maybe as well. But I would love to see a return to Waterdeep. I'd love to see Baldur's Gate. I am torn on whether or not I want to see this cast again. I kind of think it would be cool if we got to see a new adventure with like maybe one character come over, be it Simon, since they did kind of set him up to, like he was just involved enough. I feel like that they wanted you to really be invested in him as a character, but not so much they overshadowed everybody else. So maybe give him his own thing. Or if they end up, if you want to go a different direction, I forget who the actress who played the daughter's name was. Give it a couple of years where she'll look a little bit older. Have her be Harper at that point or something. Go into Waterdeep. That'd be nice. Anything like that, and then you could have the old party maybe reprise a couple of scenes, say some hellos. But I kind of would like to see a new cast and a new party, as long as Jonathan shows up at some point. And they did say he was from Waterdeep, right? The ruling council was from Waterdeep. He was coming from Waterdeep in the first scene, as I recall. So he could still show up late and get thrown out a window. Be nice. He could be on top of one of the giant statues. And I'm making myself up. That's what I would do. Just if you wanted to get a little more intense, run Descent. Like WotC has so many adventures that are actually fairly linear. Turn one of them into a movie. Anyway, all right, that was some thoughts. Mostly a waste of time, but hopefully enjoyable for somebody.